Lena had been savoring a rare moment of calm, sitting on her balcony with the city lights twinkling like distant stars, a cup of tea untouched at her side, the soft hum of traffic and distant laughter creating a gentle soundtrack to her evening. A rare pocket of peace she had fought years to earn after her stormy breakup with Mark, a love that had once consumed her entirely, leaving behind both fond memories and lingering heartbreak, a mix of longing and relief that she had never expected to feel in the same space at once, but she had convinced herself that she was finally ready to breathe without the weight of the past pressing on her chest. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that made every sound sharper, more intimate, from the soft ticking of the clock on the wall to the faint rustle of leaves brushing against her balcony railing, a quiet that felt almost fragile, as if it could be shattered at any moment, and it was precisely in that fragile silence that a knock echoed through the apartment, sudden, unexpected, insistent, sending a jolt of surprise straight to her heart, because she wasn't expecting anyone. No friends. No neighbors, certainly not someone from her past, and the timing, late in the evening, made the moment even more uncanny, forcing her to pause mid-sip, her hand trembling slightly as she placed the cup down, wondering who could possibly be at her door at this hour, and a mix of apprehension and curiosity tightened in her chest, because her life had been quiet, predictable, controlled, until now, and there was something about the knock, the hesitance in its echo, that made her pulse quicken, a combination of instinct and unease that had her tiptoeing toward the door, heart hammering, mind racing with possibilities, none of them entirely pleasant, none entirely comforting, and as she reached for the handle, a strange sense of déjà vu washed over her, a memory of the past intertwining with the present, memories of Mark, of laughter shared and arguments endured, the weight of years compressed into a single heartbeat, and when she finally opened the door, she froze, because there he stood, Alex, Mark's son, someone she hadn't seen in years, someone who had once been just a child running through the house with reckless energy and innocent curiosity, and now he stood before her, taller, older, with a presence that was both familiar and strangely new, a quiet confidence tempered with hesitation, and his eyes, those deep, searching eyes, met hers with a mixture of vulnerability and something she couldn't immediately name, something that stirred a flurry of emotions inside her. A fluttering that had nothing to do with fear, but everything to do with surprise, recognition, and a strange pull she hadn't anticipated. "Hi, Lena," he said, his voice soft, low, carrying a tremor of uncertainty that made her chest tighten unexpectedly, and for a moment, neither of them spoke, the silence stretching like a fragile thread between them, each heartbeat loud in the space, each second weighted with unspoken possibilities, until she finally found her voice, shaky but controlled, asking, "Alex? What are you doing here?" The words barely left her lips before she felt a strange mix of anxiety and anticipation, a combination that made her stomach twist, because she had imagined encounters with people from her past, but none that carried the raw intimacy, the sudden collision of old memories with present reality that this moment did, and he shifted, awkwardly, his gaze flicking downward for a moment before returning to hers, steady but hesitant, and he whispered, almost as if speaking too loudly would shatter the delicate balance, "I needed to talk to you about something important," and those words hung in the air, heavy, loaded, pressing on Lena in a way that made her heart skip and her mind race, because the phrase "something important" could mean anything, could open doors to conversations she wasn't sure she was ready for, yet something in the tone, in the way he avoided looking away, told her that whatever it was, it carried truth, sincerity, and a kind of vulnerability that demanded attention. Lena stepped aside, motioning him in, her hand lingering on the door handle as though reluctant to fully release the barrier between them, and Alex stepped inside, his movements careful, deliberate, as though he were testing the waters of her presence. The apartment familiar yet charged with tension, every object, every shadow a silent witness to the meeting, and Lena led him to the living room, offering him a seat, though neither of them moved to sit immediately, standing awkwardly, a shared hesitation that neither could quite explain, because the space between them was loaded with memories, unspoken words, and emotions that had accumulated over years of separation, a complex web of admiration, resentment, nostalgia, and perhaps even longing, though she wouldn't admit that yet. Alex ran a hand through his hair, his gesture small but revealing, a flicker of nervousness that made Lena's heart ache with empathy, because she remembered that same gesture in the past, when he was just a boy trying to navigate the adult world, and now, standing in front of her, he carried the same fragility but tempered with maturity, and she realized, with a mix of surprise and a touch of something she hadn't expected, that he had grown into his own person, someone entirely separate from the boy she had once known, yet inseparable from the echoes of the past he carried with him. I know this is sudden, he started again, his voice catching slightly, and Lena nodded, encouraging him without words, sensing that whatever he was about to reveal, it was more than a casual visit, more than a fleeting need for attention. It was something that demanded presence, understanding, perhaps even compassion, and she found herself leaning against the back of the sofa, trying to steady her own emotions, reminding herself that the night had just begun, that this encounter was only the first step into a conversation she didn't yet understand but felt compelled to follow, because the earnestness in Alex's expression, the openness in his eyes, demanded that she listen, that she witness, that she let the past and present collide in this fragile, beautiful moment. His gaze softened, and he continued, I've been meaning to say things I couldn't before, about my dad, about you, about everything that happened, and Lena felt a strange lump in her throat, a mixture of anxiety and anticipation, because she knew that whatever he was about to say would carry weight, would touch memories she had carefully tucked away, and yet there was a curiosity, a yearning even, to hear it, to see him, to understand what had changed, what had grown, and what had remained constant in both of their lives, because life had a way of bringing people together at the strangest moments, and sometimes those moments revealed truths that could heal, shift perspectives, or open hearts in ways nothing else could. Alex took a deep breath, his hands clasped loosely in front of him, fingers fidgeting slightly, a gesture so human, so ordinary, yet so full of meaning in the context of their reunion, and he finally looked up at her, directly into her eyes, saying, I've wanted to understand things, Lena. I've needed to hear your side, and maybe you can help me make sense of everything, and Lena's heart tightened again, a surge of emotion she hadn't expected, because here he was, Mark's son, no longer the child she had once known, standing in her living room, vulnerable yet strong, earnest yet hesitant, reaching out in the only way he knew how, seeking truth, understanding, connection, and maybe even closure, and in that moment, Lena realized that the night had transformed into something significant, something that could no longer be ignored, because the past, with all its lingering shadows and half-forgotten memories, was converging with the present, and the knock on her door had opened a door not just in her apartment, but in her heart, one she hadn't known was still capable of opening so wide, and as Alex waited, watching her with a mixture of hope and apprehension, Lena felt the first stirrings of something she hadn't expected, a connection that was tender, complex, and charged with the possibility of understanding, empathy, and perhaps even something deeper, something that could shift her perspective on love, family, and the choices that had shaped their lives, because life had a strange, unpredictable way of bringing the right people to the right places at the right time, and tonight, as she stood in the quiet hum of her apartment with Alex in front of her, she realized that this unexpected visit might change everything she thought she knew about herself, about the past, and about what the future could hold, and she felt a shiver of anticipation, a rush of curiosity, and a pulse of something tender that made her heart beat a little faster, because the story they were about to unfold, starting with this simple, unanticipated knock, was only beginning, and the night promised revelations, emotions, and truths that neither of them could yet fully imagine. Once Alex was seated, Lena found herself watching him closely, noticing the way his fingers fidgeted with the hem of his shirt, the subtle tension in his shoulders, the quiet way his eyes flicked around the apartment before finally settling on hers, and she realized in that instant how much had changed since the last time she had seen him as a child, how much time had passed, and yet how some things, like the depth of emotion that could be conveyed without words, had remained, and it struck her as both comforting and unsettling, because tonight was not just a reunion. It was an unspoken reckoning, a moment in which the past and present collided with gentle force, and Lena felt herself holding her breath as Alex began to speak, his voice low but steady, careful yet earnest. I've thought about this night for a long time, about whether I could even come here, whether I could even say what I needed to say without running away, and the honesty in his tone made her heart ache, because she remembered what it was like to feel hesitant yet compelled to face difficult truths, To confront emotions that were heavy but necessary, and she felt a surge of empathy for him, realizing that although he had grown, he still carried the vulnerability of the boy she had once known, now filtered through years of observation, experience, and silent admiration. He paused, looking down again, and Lena waited, her own heartbeat loud in her ears, the quiet apartment suddenly charged with a tension that was soft yet electric, because both of them knew that whatever was coming could not be easily ignored or dismissed, that it demanded attention, understanding, and patience, and she found herself leaning forward slightly, compelled to hear him, to witness his words, to let the past breathe through the present, because life had brought him here for a reason. And she felt a curious mixture of anticipation and nervousness at what would follow. Alex's next words carried a weight that seemed larger than the room itself. I've always admired you, Lena. Even when I didn't understand what that meant, even when I was too young to see clearly, I looked at you and wanted to be like you in some ways, to understand life with the patience and courage you showed, and I think I never truly said that before. Not in the right way, not when it mattered, and Lena felt a lump in her throat, because these were not words a child would simply invent, they were the echoes of years of observation, quiet reflection, and a kind of emotional honesty that few adults ever fully embrace, and she realized that he was laying himself bare, opening a door she hadn't expected to see open tonight, revealing truths that had been hidden under layers of youth, misunderstanding, and fear. She noticed the subtle shift in his posture as he spoke, the way he straightened slightly as if drawing courage from the simple act of speaking, and she understood that this conversation was not just about nostalgia or admiration, it was about clarity, about recognition of who she had been, who he had been, and the ways their lives had intersected in ways that neither could fully untangle, yet both felt compelled to explore. I know my dad and you. Alex's voice wavered for just a moment, the memories of old arguments and lingering tension pressing behind his words, and Lena's chest tightened, because she remembered those moments vividly, the fights, the misunderstandings, the heartbreak, and yet here he was, his tone different, softer, free from blame or resentment, carrying only an earnest need to speak, to be heard, to share his perspective without anger or judgment, and she felt a strange warmth, a recognition of the growth in him, a sense that he had become someone capable of reflection, empathy, and honesty. He took another breath, steadying himself, and continued, I didn't understand a lot back then, and maybe I said things I shouldn't have, or I didn't say things I should have, but I want you to know that I've seen you differently now, that I've realized the patience, the kindness, the way you handled things no one else seemed to understand, and I needed you to hear that from me, that I finally see it, and Lena felt tears prick at her eyes, though she blinked them away, because there was something profoundly moving about the courage it took for someone to speak from their heart in such a direct, honest way, and the gentle adult truth in his words resonated with her own quiet longing, her own reflections on the past, and the ways in which love, admiration, and understanding had lingered in unexpected corners of their lives, unspoken but deeply felt. She leaned back slightly, giving him the space he needed, her mind racing with memories of the past, images of laughter, of quiet mornings, of small gestures of care she had once shown without realizing their impact, and she realized with an almost shocking clarity that his presence here, tonight, was not just a visit, it was a bridge, a connection between what had been and what could be, a gentle tug at her heart that invited her to see him not as Mark's son or a reminder of her past, but as someone entirely his own, someone capable of tenderness, honesty, and a kind of emotional depth that made her chest ache with recognition. Alex's gaze softened as he spoke of admiration and reflection, and Lena felt an unexpected flutter of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years, a mixture of tenderness, surprise, and even a quiet attraction that was more about emotional resonance than anything physical, a connection born of shared vulnerability, mutual respect, and the rare intimacy that comes from truly being seen and understood, and she realized that this night was transforming her perspective on him, on the past, and on herself, because emotions she had carefully compartmentalized were spilling into the present in a way that felt natural, unforced, and profoundly moving. I guess I just needed to tell you this, Alex said finally, his voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying the weight of years, the sincerity of a young man who had navigated complex emotions and now stood before her with nothing but honesty. And Lena felt a swell of emotion in her chest, a mixture of gratitude, surprise, and an aching recognition of the boy who had grown into this thoughtful, reflective man before her, someone who had chosen to face his feelings instead of burying them, someone who had dared to step into her life unannounced, unprepared yet earnest, and she admired him quietly for that, even as a subtle warmth spread through her, a recognition that life had a way of offering moments of clarity and connection that were both unexpected and transformative. The air between them seemed to vibrate softly with the weight of what had been said, the gentle acknowledgement of truths long held back, and Lena felt the room shrink and expand at once, as if the world outside had melted away, leaving only the quiet intimacy of two hearts speaking honestly after years of silence, two souls navigating the complex terrain of love, admiration, heartbreak, and longing, all wrapped into a single, fragile moment. And she realized that Alex's words, though simple, carried a power she hadn't anticipated, a power to shift perspective, to illuminate the nuances of the past, and to open the possibility of emotional reconciliation and deeper understanding that she hadn't thought possible tonight. He leaned back slightly, running a hand through his hair, a gesture so small yet profoundly human, and Lena felt a pang of empathy, a recognition of the courage it took to expose one's emotions so fully, to admit past misunderstandings, and to reach across years of separation with nothing but honesty and a desire to connect, and she found herself responding inwardly with a mixture of pride, tenderness, and cautious hope, aware that the night was far from over, that the conversation had only begun, and that whatever came next would require patience, sensitivity, and openness, qualities she felt both ready and nervous to offer, because Alex had arrived unannounced, carrying with him not just memories, but truths, questions, and the quiet, understated possibility of something more than either of them had expected when the knock first shattered her evening peace. As they continued to talk, their words flowing more freely, touching on moments of childhood, subtle gestures of kindness, the cracks in the adult world they had each witnessed and navigated in different ways, Lena felt her heart slowly opening, each sentence, each pause, each hesitant glance weaving a tapestry of emotional resonance that was both familiar and new, and she realized that the encounter was transforming into something tender, delicate, and deeply meaningful, because Alex's presence was not merely a reminder of the past, but a mirror reflecting growth, understanding, and the potential for connection that transcended old boundaries, old heartbreaks, and old fears. And by the time the night had deepened into the quiet hours of the evening, Lena felt herself on the cusp of a revelation, a shift in perspective so subtle yet powerful that she could feel it in her bones, in the way her chest ached gently, in the fluttering of anticipation, and in the quiet awareness that life had a way of delivering lessons and connections in the most unexpected packages, and that tonight, Alex had brought one such package right to her door, unannounced, heartfelt, and transformative in ways she was only beginning to comprehend. And as the conversation wound toward a pause, Lena realized with a mixture of wonder and apprehension that the journey they had begun together was far from over, that the truths shared tonight were only the beginning of a deeper exploration of feelings, memories, and perspectives, and that her heart, cautious yet yearning, had been touched in ways that promised both challenge and possibility, intimacy and revelation. And as Alex glanced at her with quiet hope, Lena knew without doubt that her life had shifted in the span of a single evening, that her view of him, of the past, and of her own heart had been gently, irrevocably transformed, and that what came next, though uncertain, was a story worth following, a connection worth exploring, and a journey into the heart that neither of them could yet fully imagine. The night deepened around them as Lena and Alex moved toward the balcony, the city lights stretching below like a river of tiny golden sparks, and as they stepped into the cool night air, the quiet hum of distant traffic and the occasional car horn felt like a private soundtrack for the fragile intimacy building between them, a sense of being suspended in a moment that was both ordinary and extraordinary at once. And Lena found herself watching Alex carefully, noticing how his posture relaxed slightly in the open air, how the tension in his shoulders softened, and how the moonlight caught the edges of his hair, illuminating the seriousness in his gaze, and she realized with a sudden clarity that their conversation had moved from tentative words into something far deeper, an exchange that was reshaping the understanding they held of one another, a weaving of past and present that neither could have anticipated, and Alex began speaking again, his words carrying a gentle urgency. I've carried so many thoughts about you, Lena, about the way you handled things with my dad, the way you treated people, the way you held yourself even when life didn't make it easy, and I think I never appreciated it fully when I was younger, never noticed it in the way I should have, and Lena's chest tightened as she listened, not out of guilt but from the quiet impact of being truly seen, of realizing that someone who had once been part of a complex, difficult past was acknowledging her struggles and her quiet strength in a way that made her heart both ache and flutter at the same time. She nodded slightly, unsure what to say at first, because words felt insufficient against the weight of honesty Alex was offering, and yet she felt compelled to respond with attention, with presence, letting him know that his voice mattered to her, that his vulnerability was safe here, in this shared quiet space, and Alex took a slow breath, the kind that seemed to gather courage from the air itself, before continuing, I've also struggled, Lena. I've faced moments when I felt small, lost, unsure of myself, and I realized that part of my strength came from observing you, from seeing the way you dealt with life, even when it hurt, even when it wasn't fair. And I think I've been holding back telling you this because I wasn't ready to be honest with myself, but now I am, and I need you to know that you've shaped me in ways I never told you. And Lena felt an unexpected warmth rise in her chest, a tenderness that was more than just nostalgia, more than simple admiration, but a deep, gentle resonance born from the shared understanding of human vulnerability, of the quiet ways people affect each other over time, and she realized that the boy she had once known had grown into a man capable of reflection, courage, and emotional honesty, someone who could express admiration without fear, without hesitation, without the need for validation beyond the simple act of sharing truth. As they spoke, Lena found herself laughing softly at shared memories, the sound light yet rich, carrying years of connection, years of observation, and years of subtle, unspoken affection, and Alex laughed too, a sound that made her smile widen, a sound that carried relief, recognition, and a sense of release from past burdens, as if the act of speaking and being heard was itself a form of quiet liberation. I remember the little things, Alex said, eyes bright in the moonlight, like the way you used to talk to me when I didn't understand something, or how you would listen without judgment when I made mistakes, and I guess I never told you how much that mattered, how much it shaped the way I tried to treat others and the way I look at life now, and Lena felt a tear threaten to spill, but she blinked it back, feeling instead a wave of gratitude and gentle awe, because here was someone opening his heart fully, acknowledging not just her impact but the subtle ways human connections linger, grow, and transform us over time, even in silence. The air around them grew cooler as the night advanced, the lights of the city twinkling below in a soft, hypnotic rhythm, and Lena realized with a quiet start that this conversation was moving beyond mere reminiscence, that it was becoming a bridge, connecting their shared past to a possible future, a space in which emotions could be explored gently, honestly, and without expectation, and she found herself leaning slightly closer, not physically, but in attention, in presence, because every word Alex spoke seemed to draw her in, to hold her in a web of subtle fascination, care, and unexpected intimacy, and she realized that the connection they were forming now was unlike anything she had anticipated, a tender interplay of admiration, understanding, and quiet emotional attraction, a feeling that was more about hearts recognizing each other than any conscious desire. A slow unfolding of trust and awareness that left both of them suspended in the fragile, beautiful present. Alex's voice softened even further as he continued, I think there's so much I didn't understand before, Lena, about love, about life, about people, about you, and I want to understand it now, the right way, with honesty, without rushing, without pretending, and I hope you can help me with that, not because I expect anything, but because I want to learn, to see, to feel, and maybe to connect in ways I never thought possible, and Lena's chest tightened in a rush of emotion, a mixture of surprise, longing, and a tender recognition that something subtle yet profound was shifting between them, that the night had become a quiet catalyst for growth, reflection, and emotional resonance, and she felt a flutter in her heart that was both exhilarating and slightly frightening, because she had not expected to feel such warmth, such fascination, and such a tentative, delicate attraction toward someone she had once seen only as a boy, and yet here he was, a man, vulnerable and open, capable of stirring feelings she had carefully contained for years, and the complexity of it thrilled her quietly, leaving her both reflective and hopeful in ways she hadn't anticipated. The conversation deepened as Alex spoke about the struggles he had faced over the years, moments of doubt, loneliness, and self-discovery, and Lena found herself listening intently, realizing that his experiences mirrored her own in subtle ways, that the hardships of life had shaped them both, molded them, and left scars that were not shameful but human, beautiful in their honesty and resilience. And she felt a profound connection, a recognition that transcended words, that was felt in the quiet glances, the shared silences, the gentle warmth of presence, and she realized that Alex's visit was not just about him expressing himself, but about creating a space where they could both reflect, understand, and grow, together in the shared stillness of the night. "There's something else," Alex said finally, voice catching slightly, "something I haven't told you before because I didn't know how, because it felt too complicated, but I feel like I need to, even if it changes everything between us, even if it makes things different. I need you to know the truth of what I've felt, what I've seen, what I've realized," and Lena's stomach fluttered, a mix of curiosity, apprehension, and gentle anticipation tightening in her chest, because she knew from experience that truths spoken from the heart could heal or unsettle, could inspire reflection or stir emotions long buried, and yet she felt ready, in a quiet, tentative way, to hear him, to witness him, to share this unfolding moment in all its delicate complexity, because the sincerity in his eyes told her that whatever came next was not about recklessness or impulsivity, but about honesty, courage, and the subtle, transformative power of human connection. Alex's gaze met hers again, unwavering, steady, and Lena felt a shiver of recognition, a pulse of awareness that this was more than a conversation, more than a reflection. It was a meeting of hearts and minds, a delicate dance of emotions, a quiet romance of understanding, longing, and admiration that neither could have planned yet both were drawn to. And as he spoke, sharing memories of moments she had long forgotten, subtle acts of kindness, lessons learned, and quiet admiration, Lena felt her own heart opening, releasing years of caution and quiet solitude, letting the possibility of connection, of emotional closeness, of shared understanding, bloom gently within her. And she realized with a mix of wonder and nervous anticipation that this night, this conversation, this encounter, was becoming something transformative, a pivot point, a soft awakening of emotion, attraction, and the fragile beginnings of trust that could lead to something beautiful, something rare, something tender. As the hours passed, they spoke of hopes, dreams, fears, and regrets, weaving together stories, reflections, and emotions into a tapestry that was at once familiar and new, and Lena felt a sense of intimacy growing between them, not rushed, not forced, but slow, natural, and deeply affecting, and she realized that Alex's visit, unannounced as it had been, was reshaping her understanding of herself, of him, and of what was possible between people who had shared past connections but were meeting now in the full, honest light of maturity, vulnerability, and emotional courage, and she knew, with a quiet certainty, that this night would remain with her, lingering in memory, softening old wounds, sparking new hope, and leaving her heart open to possibilities she had not imagined when she first opened the door. And as Alex reached a pause, looking at her with gentle anticipation, Lena realized that the moment had arrived, delicate and fragile, where the night could shift further, where hearts could inch closer, where unspoken feelings could find voice, and she felt a flutter of something tender, exciting, and profoundly human, knowing that what began as a simple conversation was evolving into a night neither of them would forget, a night of revelations, emotional closeness, and a quiet, tender romance that promised to deepen as dawn approached, leaving both of them on the cusp of something entirely new, entirely unexpected, and entirely heart-stirring. The first light of dawn began to touch the city, casting a soft glow across Lena's balcony as she and Alex continued to stand close, their conversation having evolved into a deeper, more vulnerable territory where the past, present, and the possibility of future connection intertwined in a way neither had expected, and Lena felt a quiet thrill mixed with tenderness as she listened to Alex speak with a sincerity that seemed to strip away all pretense, all fear, leaving only honesty, admiration, and a fragile, beautiful, emotional resonance that made her chest tighten and her heart beat faster, because she realized that this moment was no longer just about reflection or gratitude, it was about understanding, about recognition, about a human connection that was rare, delicate, and entirely transformative, and Alex's words continued to flow, each one building on the last. I've thought a lot about who I am and what I want, Lena, and I've realized that so much of it comes from seeing you, learning from you, feeling the impact of your patience, your kindness, your strength, and I don't say this lightly, but I feel like I've finally grown into a place where I can be honest with myself, and with you, about the way I feel, about the admiration I've held quietly for years, and the truth is, I care deeply, and I wanted you to know that before anything else. And Lena felt a rush of emotion she couldn't quite name, a swirl of longing, tenderness, and the flutter of an unexpected attraction that had grown naturally from months and years of observation, reflection, and emotional resonance, because she understood that Alex was no longer the boy she had once known, yet he carried within him the essence of that time, the echoes of shared moments, the soft imprint of familiarity, and the possibility of something entirely new, and she found herself leaning slightly forward, drawn not by impulse but by the subtle magnetism of emotional honesty, vulnerability, and the gentle courage he displayed in baring his heart, and she realized that the unannounced visit that had startled her the night before had become a turning point, a night of revelation and transformation that neither could have foreseen but both felt compelled to honor and explore, because emotions unspoken for years had been given voice, and the quiet power of connection had shifted the landscape of their hearts. Alex took a deep breath, the kind that seemed to steady him while simultaneously inviting Lena to meet him in that delicate space, and he continued, I know it might be complicated, that life is messy, that feelings are unpredictable, and I'm not asking for anything in return. Not yet, not immediately, but I needed to tell you because keeping it inside felt wrong, because honesty matters, and because maybe we can find something beautiful in this, something gentle, something real, and Lena's heart swelled with an emotion that was a mixture of warmth, curiosity, and the soft, fluttering excitement of possibility, because here was someone she had known as a child, someone shaped by a complicated past, standing before her fully, honestly, and without pretense, inviting her into a shared emotional space that was tender, respectful, and profoundly moving, and she realized that her own feelings, which she had carefully guarded, were responding in kind, awakening to the resonance of admiration, subtle attraction, and the gentle pull of hearts recognizing each other after years of separation and growth. The city below began to stir as the early morning light grew stronger, painting the balcony and the room behind them with a soft, golden hue, and Lena felt a sense of clarity, a recognition that this night had been more than chance, that it was a turning point, an invitation to explore the depth of human connection, empathy, and affection in a way that was both natural and emotionally profound, and she found herself speaking softly, almost in a whisper, Alex. I didn't expect this, not like this, not so suddenly, but I feel it too, this connection, this understanding, and I want to see where it goes, to learn more, to feel more, gently, carefully, honestly, and as the words left her lips, she felt a sense of release, a soft exhale of emotion held back for years, because the dialogue they shared was more than conversation, it was a mutual acknowledgement of hearts, of admiration, of subtle longing, and the tender spark of something romantic, not impulsive, not rushed, but slow, steady, and quietly powerful, a realization that life sometimes brings people together in unexpected ways, that honesty and courage can open doors thought long closed, and that love, understanding, and emotional resonance can appear in forms both surprising and profound. Alex's eyes softened, a quiet smile touching his lips, the kind that carried relief, joy, and the subtle awareness of shared intimacy, and he reached out gently, his hand hovering near hers, an invitation without pressure, a connection without expectation, and Lena felt a flutter in her chest, a warmth that spread from her heart outward, a recognition that this gesture, so simple yet loaded with meaning, was a symbol of trust, mutual understanding, and the possibility of tenderness, a bridge between past and future, between admiration and affection, between respect and the soft stirrings of romantic feeling, and she found herself taking a small step closer, not needing to rush, not needing to label it, simply responding to the honesty and openness that had defined their evening, the quiet emotional intimacy that had grown from shared words, mutual reflection, and the subtle acknowledgement of human complexity and growth. They spoke then of small things, the subtle textures of everyday life, dreams, fears, hopes, and regrets, each topic flowing into the next, weaving a tapestry of understanding that was delicate, profound, and emotionally sustaining. And Lena felt herself being drawn into Alex's world just as he had been drawn into hers, a gentle intertwining of hearts and minds that felt natural, unforced, and deeply moving, a quiet romance of shared vulnerability and mutual recognition. And she realized that this was the kind of connection that life rarely offers, the kind that emerges slowly, softly, through honesty, patience, and emotional courage, and she felt grateful for it, amazed by it, and tenderly curious about where it could lead. Alex's voice lowered again, a whisper almost carried away by the morning breeze. I've always wanted to tell you how much you mean to me, not in words I thought you wanted to hear, but in truth, in feeling, and tonight, I finally can, and I hope that even if we take it slowly, carefully, we can explore what's here, because it feels real, it feels right, it feels like something worth caring for. And Lena felt her heart flutter, her chest tighten with gentle excitement, the kind that comes when someone speaks to the part of your soul you didn't realize had been waiting, the kind that makes time feel suspended, the kind that transforms ordinary spaces into moments of quiet magic. And she responded softly, with honesty that mirrored his. Alex, I feel it too. I feel the care, the honesty, the gentleness, and I want to see it too, to understand it, to feel it grow, slowly, carefully, truly. And in that moment, a subtle shift occurred, a recognition that the night had achieved something remarkable, that the hearts that had approached each other cautiously were now aligned in trust, mutual respect, and the tender stirrings of something romantic, emotional, and profoundly human, a connection that honored the past, acknowledged the present, and offered a promise of shared exploration in the future. The morning sun rose higher, spreading warm light across the balcony and into the room, and Lena and Alex stood together, words having faded into comfortable silence, each aware of the other's presence, each feeling the weight and delight of unspoken understanding, the quiet electricity of hearts resonating in tandem. And Lena felt a gentle joy, a fluttering anticipation, a soft excitement mixed with a profound calm, because she realized that what had begun with an unannounced knock had transformed into something rare and beautiful, a night of revelation, emotional honesty, shared admiration, subtle romance, and the tentative promise of a deeper connection. And as Alex's hand brushed lightly against hers, a touch both tentative and intentional, Lena felt the final confirmation. This was more than a conversation, more than nostalgia, more than admiration. It was the beginning of a delicate, tender journey, one that would honor the past, embrace the present, and cautiously explore the future. And she smiled softly, a mixture of wonder, hope, and quiet anticipation, knowing that life had brought them together for a reason, that hearts could heal, connect, and even open to unexpected possibilities, and that the story they were beginning tonight was one of emotional courage, subtle romance, and the enduring power of honesty, trust, and gentle connection, a story that would continue to unfold with patience, tenderness, and the promise of hearts meeting fully, honestly, and without reservation, ready to embrace whatever beauty and complexity life had to offer.